Room 408, the Seaside Grand Hotel. A Wednesday night in October. The note was folded twice, tucked beneath the lamp on the bedside table, like a mint on a pillow. Except this wasn't a welcome message from housekeeping. This wasn't a receipt or a forgotten shopping list from the last guest. 8 words, handwritten, blue ink bleeding slightly into cheap hotel stationery. Don't trust the man in 412. He knows. That's what it said. That's all it said. And within 72 hours, those 8 words would unravel a crime that had gone undetected for 11 years, expose a predator hiding in plain sight, and force one woman to make a choice that would put her own life in danger. But here's the thing. The woman who found that note wasn't supposed to be in room 408. She wasn't even supposed to be in that hotel. A last-minute booking, a flight delay, a random assignment at the front desk. 3 small coincidences that aligned like tumblers in a lock. And what she discovered about the man in room 412 didn't just make her call 911. It made her question everything she thought she knew about the quiet, unremarkable man she'd been married to for 6 years. Her name was Catherine Marsh. She was 34 years old, a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, and she had just landed at Charleston International Airport 3 hours behind schedule. Her connecting flight to Atlanta had been canceled due to weather. Her luggage was somewhere over Tennessee, and the airline had given her a voucher for the Seaside Grand, a mid-tier business hotel about 20 minutes from the terminal. She didn't want to be there. She wanted to be home in her apartment in Buckhead, eating leftover Thai food and watching something mindless on television. She wanted to be anywhere but standing in the lobby of this forgettable hotel at 11:30 at night, watching a tired desk clerk hunt for a room key. The Seaside Grand smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and coffee that had been sitting too long. The wallpaper in the lobby featured a repeating pattern of seashells that had probably looked beachy and cheerful in the 90s, but now just looked dated. The ice machine down the hall hummed and clanked. A television mounted in the corner played cable news with the volume low. Catherine signed the registration card without really reading it. She took the key card. 4th floor, room 408. She dragged her carry-on to the elevator and rode up alone, watching the numbers climb. The 4th floor hallway was empty and silent. The carpet had a different pattern here, geometric shapes in burgundy and gold that had been worn thin in front of each door. She passed 402, 404, 406. The faint murmur of a television behind one of them. The smell of someone's takeout dinner. Room 408 was at the end of the hall, next to the stairwell. She swiped the key card, waited for the green light, and pushed open the door. Standard room. King bed with a floral comforter. Desk and chair. Mini fridge. Window overlooking the parking lot. Everything exactly as expected. Catherine set her bag on the luggage rack. She kicked off her heels. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out her phone to text her husband that she'd landed safely, that she was stuck overnight, that she'd be home tomorrow afternoon. That's when she noticed the lamp. It was an unremarkable lamp, brass base with a cream-colored shade, the kind you'd find in 10,000 hotel rooms across America. But there was something tucked beneath it, a corner of white paper, visible against the dark wood of the nightstand. She almost ignored it. She almost assumed it was a receipt or a note from housekeeping or something left behind by a previous guest. But something made her reach for it, some instinct that would later feel like fate. The paper was folded twice. Hotel stationery, the kind with the establishment's logo at the top. She unfolded it. 8 words, blue ink, handwriting that was careful, deliberate, like someone had taken their time. Don't trust a man in 412. He knows. Catherine read it 3 times. She looked at the door, suddenly aware of how alone she was. Room 412 would be just down the hall, just 4 doors away. Her first thought was that it was a joke, a prank left by bored teenagers or someone with a strange sense of humor. Her second thought was that it was meant for someone else, the previous occupant of room 408, someone whose life this message was actually relevant to. But then she thought about the handwriting, the way the letters were formed with such deliberate precision, the slight tremor in the lines that suggested the writer had been nervous or afraid. This wasn't a joke. Someone had written this in earnest. Someone had wanted the next person in this room to see it. Catherine stood up. She walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The silence pressed against her ears. She should have done a lot of things at that moment. She should have called the front desk. She should have asked to be moved to a different room. She should have crumpled up the note and thrown it away and forgotten about it by morning. Instead, she did something that would change everything. She opened the door. Quietly, just a crack, and she looked down the hall toward room 412. The door to 412 was closed. No light visible underneath. No sound from within. Just a door, identical to every other door on the floor, revealing nothing about who might be behind it. Catherine closed her door, locked it, put the chain on. She sat back down on the bed and looked at the note again. Her heart was beating faster than it should have been. Her palms were damp. He knows. Knows what? The rational part of her brain was already constructing explanations. A domestic dispute. A cheating spouse. Some drama between strangers that had nothing to do with her. She should throw away the note, take a shower, get some sleep, and catch her morning flight. This wasn't her business. This wasn't her problem. But Catherine Marsh had spent her whole life playing it safe, making the sensible choice, avoiding conflict. And lately, in the quiet moments between meetings and flights and emails, she'd started to wonder if playing it safe had cost her something she couldn't quite name. She looked at her phone, looked at the note, looked at the door, and then she did something completely unlike her. She went to find out who was in room 412. The hallway at midnight had a different quality than it had an hour before. The same burgundy carpet, the same closed doors, but now the silence felt deliberate, watchful. Catherine walked slowly, her stocking feet making no sound. For 412. She stopped in front of the door, listened. Nothing. No television, no voice, no movement. Either the room was empty, or whoever was inside was very, very quiet. She looked at the door handle, looked at the small gap between the door and the frame. A faint line of darkness. No light from within. She raised her hand to knock, held it there. What would she even say? "Excuse me. I found a note that says not to trust you." What exactly do you know? It was absurd. She was being absurd. Catherine lowered her hand, turned to go back to her room. That's when the door to room 412 opened. The man standing in the doorway was ordinary in every way that mattered. Mid-50s, receding hairline, wire-rimmed glasses. He wore khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt, the kind of outfit you'd wear to a casual office or a weekend brunch. His face was soft, almost kind, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. He smiled, a small, pleasant smile. "Can I help you?" His voice was gentle, unassuming, the voice of a guidance counselor or an accountant. Catherine's throat went dry. Every instinct screamed at her to say something normal, to make an excuse, to defuse whatever this was. "Sorry," she heard herself say. "Wrong room." The man's smile didn't waver. "Easy mistake. These hallways all look the same." "They really do." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You're in 408. Something about the way he said it made her skin prickle. Like he already knew. Like he'd been waiting. "Just for the night," she said. "Flight got canceled." "Ah, weather." He leaned against the doorframe, casual, unhurried, like they had all the time in the world. "Weather. Well, hope the rest of your trip goes smoothly." He reached up and adjusted his glasses. A small, precise movement. "Get some rest. These hotel beds aren't great, but they're better than an airport chair." "Right. Thanks." He stepped back into his room. The door closed with a soft click. Catherine stood in the hallway for a long moment, her heart hammering against her ribs. Nothing had happened. A brief, awkward exchange with a stranger. The kind of interaction that happens 1,000 times a day in hotels across the world. But as she walked back to room 408, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about that man was deeply, terribly wrong. The note was still on the bed where she'd left it. She picked it up. "Read it again. Don't trust the man in 412. He knows." She pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over her husband's name. David would tell her she was being paranoid. David would tell her to go to sleep, catch her flight, stop looking for problems where there weren't any. David. They'd been married 6 years. Met at a conference in Denver. He was an IT consultant, which meant he traveled almost as much as she did. Theirs was a marriage of overlapping schedules and crossed paths, of quick dinners between business trips and weekends spent catching up on sleep. It worked. They worked. They were comfortable together, even if the spark had faded into something quieter. A partnership. A routine. Catherine didn't call David. She didn't call anyone. Instead, she opened her laptop and typed the name of the hotel into a search engine. Seaside Grand Hotel, Charleston. News. Recent. Nothing unusual came up. TripAdvisor reviews. A couple of press releases about renovations. A brief mention in a local news article about business travel trends. She tried a different search. Seaside Grand Hotel crime. Seaside Grand Hotel incident. Still nothing relevant. A car break-in in the parking lot 2 years ago. A noise complaint that made the local police blotter. She was being ridiculous. She knew she was being ridiculous. A cryptic note from a stranger. A brief encounter in a hallway. And she was spinning conspiracy theories. Catherine closed her laptop, took a shower, changed into the t-shirt she'd packed in her carry-on, tried to sleep. She couldn't sleep. The note sat on the nightstand, those 8 words burning in her mind like a neon sign. At 2:14 a.m., Catherine made a decision. She would go down to the front desk. She would ask who was in room 412. She would explain about the note, about the strange encounter, about the feeling she couldn't shake. They would probably think she was crazy. They would probably tell her it was nothing. But at least she would know. She got dressed, opened the door. The man from 412 was standing in the hallway. He wasn't doing anything threatening, just standing there, about 10 feet from her door, his back against the wall, his hands in his pockets, like he was waiting for someone, like he was waiting for her. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. Same gentle voice. Same pleasant smile. Catherine's hand tightened on the door handle. No. Something about hotels. Strange beds. Strange sounds. He pushed off from the wall. Took a step toward her. "I'm Michael, by the way. Forgot to introduce myself earlier." Catherine. Catherine. He said her name like he was tasting it. That's a nice name. Classic. She should go back inside. She should close the door and call the front desk and not open it again until morning. But if she did that, she would never know, never understand. "What are you doing out here?" she asked. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd walk around. Clear my head." Another step closer. "You." "Same. Funny. 2 insomniacs on the same floor." He smiled. "What are the odds?" Catherine's mind was racing. The note could have been written by anyone, could have been meant for anyone, but had been tucked under the lamp in room 408, and she was in room 408, and this man, this Michael, had been standing in the hallway at 2 a.m., like he knew she would come out. "Michael," she said, "what room are you in?" "For 12, right down the hall." He gestured vaguely. "Why?" "Just curious." His smile flickered, just for a moment, a crack in the pleasant facade. "You know," he said, "I've been coming to this hotel for years. Business trips, mostly. They know me at the front desk. Always give me the same room." He took another step, close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Something clean and sharp. It's nice having a routine. Familiar places. Familiar faces. "I'm sure. But tonight feels different. Something in the air." He leaned in slightly. "Don't you think?" Catherine felt the wall against her back. She hadn't realized she'd been retreating. "I should get some sleep," she said. "Of course. Big day tomorrow. Flight to catch." He stepped back, giving her space. "Nice meeting you, Catherine. I have a feeling we'll see each other again." He walked away, down the hall, past his door, 412, without stopping, disappeared around the corner toward the elevators. Catherine went back into her room, locked the door, put the chain on, pushed the desk chair under the handle. She sat on the bed with her phone in her hand, shaking. Something was very wrong with Michael from room 412. She didn't know what. She didn't have proof. But every instinct she possessed was screaming at her to run. She looked at the note again. He knows. Knows what? About her? About the note? About whoever had written it. Catherine made a decision. If she was going to figure out what was happening, she needed more information. And there was only one place to get it. She needed to find out who had stayed in room 408 before her. The front desk clerk was a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that said Destiny. She looked up from her phone when Catherine approached, her expression shifting from boredom to customer service readiness. "Can I help you?" Catherine had rehearsed what she was going to say. Something casual. Something that wouldn't raise alarm bells. "Hi. This is going to sound strange, but I found something in my room. A note. I think it might belong to whoever stayed there before me." Destiny's eyebrows rose slightly. "A note?" "Yeah. Looks like it might be important. I wanted to see if I could return it." "That's really thoughtful." Destiny turned to her computer, tapping at the keyboard. "Let me see. Room 408. The last guest checked out this morning. It's just the reservation was for 3 nights, but they only stayed 2. Destiny frowned at the screen. "Left early. No explanation. Do you have their contact information? So I could reach out." Destiny shook her head. "I can't give that out. Privacy policy. But I can note it in the system, and if they call looking for something, we can let them know." "Right. Of course." Catherine hesitated. "What about room 412? The man staying there? Michael." Something changed in Destiny's expression. Subtle but unmistakable. A flicker of recognition. "Mr. Werner." "Yeah, he's a regular." She said it carefully, like she was choosing her words. "He mentioned he stays here often." "Every month. Been coming here for—" Destiny paused, calculating. "Must be 8 or 9 years now. Business, I think. Nice guy. Always tips housekeeping." "Does he usually stay in 412? Destiny's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why all the questions about Mr. Werner?" Catherine forced a smile. "Just making conversation. Ran into him in the hallway." "Right." Destiny didn't look convinced. "Well, is there anything else I can help you with?" "No. Thanks for your help." Catherine walked back toward the elevators, her mind churning. The previous guest had left early. Cut their trip short. The same trip during which they'd left a note warning about the man in 412. It could be a coincidence. People cut trips short all the time. Family emergencies, work crises, change of plans. But combined with everything else, it felt like another piece of a puzzle she couldn't yet see. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. A woman stepped out. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. Short gray hair. Dressed in jeans and a sweater despite the late hour. She had the look of someone who hadn't slept in days. She stopped when she saw Catherine. Stared at her with an intensity that was almost unsettling. "You're staying on the 4th floor," the woman said. Not a question. "Yes." "What room?" Catherine hesitated. "Why do you want to know?" The woman grabbed her arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "What room?" 408. The woman's face went pale. Actually pale. The color draining from her cheeks like water from a sink. "Did you find it?" she whispered. "The note. Did you find it?" Catherine's heart stopped. "You wrote it," she said. "You're the one who wrote the note." The woman pulled her away from the elevator, into the alcove where the vending machines hummed and glowed. Her eyes darted around, checking that they were alone. "My name is Patricia Reeves," she said. "I was staying in 408 until this morning, and I left that note because I had to warn someone. Anyone." Her voice cracked. "Because the man in 412 is a monster, and I think he knows I figured it out." "Figured what out? What are you talking about?" Patricia's hands were shaking. She clasped them together, trying to hold herself still. "I'm a retired court reporter. 30 years in the system. I've heard testimony from murderers, rapists, con artists. I know what evil looks like. I know what it sounds like." She swallowed hard. "And the man in that room. Michael Werner. I recognized him. Recognized him from where? From a case. 11 years ago. Grand jury testimony. A missing persons investigation that went nowhere. Patricia's eyes were wet. 5 women disappeared from this area over 3 years. Same profile. Same age range. Same circumstances. Traveling alone. Staying in hotels just like this one. Catherine felt cold. Actually cold. Like someone had poured ice water down her spine. They never found them. Any of them. The investigation stalled. The FBI pulled out. Everyone assumed they'd run away. Started new lives. Whatever story made it easiest to close the file. Patricia's grip tightened on her own hands. But I heard the testimony. I heard what the witnesses said. And one of them described a man who kept appearing near the victims. A man who was staying at the same hotels, working the same conferences, crossing paths in ways that seemed random but weren't. And you think Michael Werner? I don't think. I know. Patricia's voice was fierce. I saw his face on the witness stand. Different hair then, different glasses, but the same face, the same smile. I never forget a face. Professional hazard. But if you recognized him, why didn't you go to the police? I did. This morning. Patricia laughed bitterly. You know what they said? They said I was mistaken. They said the investigation was closed. They said I should enjoy my vacation and stop worrying about things that happened a decade ago. So you left the note. I left the note because I had to do something. And then I saw him. In the hallway. Looking at me. And I knew. She trailed off. I knew I had to get out. I couldn't stay another night in that building with him knowing that I knew. But if he's really what you say he is, you're in danger. You should be somewhere safe. I know. I know. Patricia ran a hand through her short hair. But I couldn't leave without trying to warn someone. Without trying to make sure that if anyone else ended up in that room, they would know to be careful. Catherine's mind was racing. This woman could be paranoid. Delusional. Seeing patterns that weren't there. People misidentified strangers all the time. But she thought about Michael Werner's smile. The way he'd been standing in the hallway at 2 a.m. The way he'd said, I have a feeling we'll see each other again. I met him, Catherine said. Tonight. He was standing outside my room. Patricia's face crumpled. Oh God. Oh God, no. He was polite. Nothing overtly threatening. But there was something about him. Something that felt wrong. That's how he operates. I read everything I could find about those cases. Witnesses said the same thing. He seems so normal. So harmless. That's how he gets close to them. What do we do? Catherine asked. If the police won't listen, what do we do? Patricia reached into her purse, pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote down everything I could remember. Dates, names, details from the testimony that might help someone make the connection. She pressed the paper into Catherine's hands. I'm leaving Charleston tonight. I'm not coming back. But someone has to follow up. Someone has to make sure this doesn't get buried again. Why me? You don't even know me. Because you found the note. Because you came looking for answers instead of throwing it away. Patricia's eyes met hers. Because sometimes the universe puts people in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. And maybe that's you. Catherine looked at the paper in her hands. A list of names, dates, hotel addresses, fragments of testimony. If I do this, if I try to take this to someone who will listen, I could be putting myself in danger. Yes, Patricia said quietly. You could. Catherine thought about her life. The sales meetings, the airport lounges, the comfortable apartment and the comfortable marriage and the comfortable routine that had started to feel less like safety and more like a cage. She thought about playing it safe, about making the sensible choice. And then she thought about 5 women who had disappeared without a trace. 5 women whose names she didn't even know. 5 women who had been someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's friend. I'll do it, she said. I'll find someone who will listen. Patricia's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Thank you. She took a step back. But be careful. He's smart. He's been doing this for years without getting caught. Don't let him see you watching him. Don't let him know you suspect anything." "I won't." Patricia turned to go. Stopped. Looked back. "One more thing. The 5 women who disappeared, they all had something in common. Something the investigators never connected." "What?" "They were all traveling for work. Sales, consulting, pharmaceutical reps." Patricia's eyes were dark. "Just like you." She disappeared through the lobby doors into the night. Catherine stood alone in the vending machine alcove, holding a paper full of names and dates, and a growing certainty that she had just stepped into something far more dangerous than a delayed flight. And somewhere above her, on the 4th floor, the man in room 412 was waiting. Catherine didn't sleep that night. She sat in her room with the desk chair wedged under the door handle, reading and rereading the pages Patricia had given her. The names came first. Emily Vargas, 29, missing since 2013. Jennifer Tate, 31, missing since 2012. Sarah Klein, 27, missing since 2014. Michelle Brooks, 33, missing since 2013. Anna Chun, 30, missing since 2014. 5 women over 3 years, all within a 100-mile radius of Charleston, all business travelers, all staying at hotels. Patricia's notes included fragments of testimony she remembered from the grand jury. Witnesses who had seen a quiet man with glasses at the same hotels, the same restaurants, the same conference centers where the women were last seen. A rental car spotted near 2 of the disappearance sites. A description that could have fit 1,000 men, ordinary to the point of invisibility. The investigation had hit dead end after dead end. No bodies were ever found. No definitive connection between the disappearances was established. The cases remained open but unsolved. The women listed as missing rather than deceased. Catherine pulled out her laptop and started searching. Old news articles, missing persons databases, true crime forums where armchair detectives picked apart cold cases. The information she found confirmed Patricia's account. 5 women, 3 years, no answers. The case had attracted some national attention when the FBI got involved, but when the trail went cold, so did the coverage. The families were still searching, still hoping, still waiting for news that never came. She thought about calling David, telling him everything, asking him what to do. But she already knew what David would say. He would tell her to stay out of it. He would tell her this wasn't her problem. He would tell her to catch her flight and come home and let the professionals handle it. And maybe he would be right. Maybe this was none of her business. Maybe Patricia Reeves was a paranoid woman seeing monsters and shadows. But Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that she had been given this information for a reason. That somehow and possibly she was supposed to be here, in this room, at this moment. She looked at the note again. Those 8 words that had started everything. Don't trust the man in 412. He knows. He knows. What did Michael Werner know? Did he know that Patricia had recognized him? Did he know that she had left a warning behind? Did he know that Catherine had found it? The sky outside her window was beginning to lighten. Dawn breaking over Charleston, painting the parking lot in shades of pink and gold. Catherine made her decision. She wasn't going to catch her flight. She wasn't going to go home and pretend none of this had happened. She was going to find out the truth about Michael Werner. The first call she made was to her company. A lie about a family emergency. Her manager was sympathetic, told her to take whatever time she needed. Easy. The second call was harder. "Hey, babe." David's voice was groggy. 6:30 a.m. Did you land? "Yeah. Listen, something came up. I need to stay in Charleston a few more days." "What? Why?" "Work thing. Complicated." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth. "I'll explain when I get home." "Catherine, what's going on? You sound weird." "I'm fine. Just tired. Long night." A pause. David had always been able to tell when she was hiding something. 6 years of marriage had given him a finely tuned sense for her evasions. "Okay," he said finally. "Call me tonight." "I will." She hung up before he could ask more questions. The third call was to the Charleston Police Department. She asked to speak with someone about a cold case. She was transferred twice, put on hold 3 times, and finally connected to a detective named James Holloway, who sounded like he had better things to do with his morning. "Ma'am, I'm happy to take down your information, but I should tell you that without new physical evidence, it's very difficult to reopen investigations of this nature." "I understand, but I have reason to believe the person responsible for these disappearances is staying at a hotel in Charleston right now. The Seaside Grand, room 412. A long silence. "Ma'am, that's a serious allegation." "I know it is." "Can you tell me the basis for this allegation?" Catherine took a breath. A woman named Patricia Reeves identified him. She was a court reporter who worked on the original grand jury investigation. She saw him at this hotel and recognized him from testimony given 11 years ago. "And where is Ms. Reeves now?" "She left. She was afraid." Another silence. Catherine could practically hear Detective Holloway's skepticism through the phone. "I'll look into it," he said finally. "But I want to be clear with you. Even if this man is the same person who was mentioned in the original investigation, being mentioned isn't the same as being a suspect. We can't act on speculation." "I understand. I'll make some calls, see what I can find out. In the meantime, I'd recommend you keep your distance from this individual." "I intend to." She gave him her contact information and hung up, feeling the weight of what she'd just said in motion. Now she needed to wait and watch. Catherine moved to a different hotel that morning, a place across town, small and anonymous, where she paid cash and registered under a variation of her maiden name. She kept her phone charged and her laptop open, monitoring news feeds and police scanners and true crime forums for any mention of the Seaside Grand or Michael Werner. Nothing happened. 24 hours passed, then 48. Detective Holloway didn't call back. The world continued spinning as if 5 women hadn't vanished into thin air and the man responsible wasn't sleeping peacefully in a mid-range hotel room. On the 3rd day, Catherine's phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Marsh." Detective Holloway's voice was different, tighter, more alert. "We need to talk. Can you come down to the station?" The Charleston Police Department was housed in a squat brick building near the waterfront. Detective Holloway met her in the lobby, his face grave. "We looked into Michael Werner," he said as he led her down a fluorescent-lit hallway. "The name doesn't match anyone in our databases. It's a fake. A fake. The credit card he's been using to pay for that hotel room is tied to an LLC that doesn't really exist. Shell company. We traced it back through 3 different holding companies before the trail went cold." Catherine's stomach dropped. "So who is he really?" "We don't know yet. But you were right about one thing." Holloway pushed open the door to a conference room where 2 other detectives were waiting. Someone with his description was mentioned in the original investigation. A person of interest who was never identified. He matches witness descriptions from at least 3 of the disappearances. Catherine sank into a chair. "Oh my God. We've had eyes on Seaside Grand since yesterday. Werner, or whoever he is still there. Keeps to himself. Goes out for meals, comes back. Normal behavior. So what happens now?" The detectives exchanged glances. "That's complicated," Holloway said. "We don't have enough for an arrest. No physical evidence. No witnesses placing him with any of the victims. Just a pattern of behavior and a fake identity. But if he's using a fake name, doesn't that? It's suspicious, sure. But it's not illegal to use a pseudonym at a hotel. We need more." Catherine felt frustration rising in her chest. "So he just walks free? After what he's done?" "We're working on it. Running his photo through national databases. Reaching out to agencies in other states. If this guy has a history, we'll find it." Holloway leaned forward. "But I need to ask you something. Why are you still here? You could have gone home days ago. Left this to us." Catherine thought about the question. Really thought about it. "Because those 5 women deserve better," she said finally. "Because somebody has to care enough to see this through. And because I was put in that room for a reason. I have to believe that." Holloway studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, then let me tell you what we're planning, and how you can help. The plan was simple. Dangerous, but simple. Michael Werner, or whoever he was, appeared to select his victims by observation. He watched them, learned their routines, found the moment when they were most vulnerable. If Catherine could draw his attention, if she could become the woman he decided to target next, they might be able to catch him in the act, gather the evidence they needed, stop him before he hurt anyone else. I won't lie to you, Holloway said. There's risk involved. We'll have eyes on you the whole time, but if something goes wrong... I understand. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. No. Catherine's voice was steady. I've spent my whole life being careful, playing it safe, and look where that's gotten me. She thought about her marriage, her job, the quiet desperation she'd been ignoring for years. I have a chance to do something that actually matters. I'm not walking away from that. The next morning, Catherine checked back into the Seaside Grand. Room 406 this time, right next door to her original room, right down the hall from 412. She made sure to be visible, to follow a routine that would be easy to observe. Breakfast in the hotel restaurant at 7:30, a walk through downtown Charleston in the afternoon, dinner at a small cafe 3 blocks away, drinks at the hotel bar in the evening. She wore a wire under her clothes. She had a panic button in her pocket. Plainclothes officers were stationed throughout the hotel, watching every entrance, every exit, every hallway. For 2 days, nothing happened. Michael Werner came and went. He smiled at her when they crossed paths in the lobby. He made small talk in the elevator. He was polite, charming, completely unremarkable. But Catherine noticed things. The way his eyes lingered a moment too long. The way he seemed to know her schedule before she told him. The way he was always nearby, always present, as if their encounters were coincidental when she knew they weren't. On the 3rd night, she was in a hotel bar when he sat down beside her. Catherine, he said, fancy meeting you here. Michael. She kept her voice casual, friendly. Can I buy you a drink? How generous. He signaled the bartender. Scotch. Neat. They talked about nothing. Weather. Travel. The tedium of business trips. He was good at this, she realized. Good at being forgettable. At making himself seem harmless. But there was something in his eyes. A coldness beneath the warmth. A predator watching from behind a pleasant mask. You know, he said, swirling his scotch, I've noticed you seem different from the other business travelers I meet. Different how? More aware. Like you're actually paying attention to the world around you. Most people walk through life half asleep. Not you. Catherine's heart was pounding, but she kept her expression neutral. I try to stay present. I appreciate that. He leaned closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne again. That clean, sharp scent. Most people are so easy to read, so predictable. You're harder to figure out. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. He smiled. That gentle, unremarkable smile. I find you interesting, Catherine, and I don't say that about many people. She forced herself to smile back. That's very kind. I'm in room 412, in case you'd like to continue this conversation somewhere more private. He finished his drink in one smooth motion. Think about it. He left her there at the bar, her hands shaking slightly around her glass. Into her wire, she whispered. He made contact, invited me to his room. A voice crackled in her earpiece. Copy that. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. We need more time to set up. But as Catherine watched Michael Werner walk away, she felt something shift inside her. They'd been waiting for 3 days. They'd been watching and planning and hoping he would make a move. And now he had. He'd invited her to his room. The room where God knows what had happened to those 5 women. The room where answers were waiting. She thought about Emily Vargas, Jennifer Tate, Sarah Klein, Michelle Brooks, Anna Chun. 5 women who had never come home. She thought about their families. Still waiting. Still hoping. Still needing to know what happened to the people they loved. And she made a choice. I'm going in, she said quietly. I'm sorry, but I have to know. She stood up, walked out of the bar, took the elevator to the 4th floor. Room 412. She knocked. The door opened. Michael Werner stood there, and for the first time, she saw the mask slip. Just for a moment, a flash of something hungry and dark in his eyes before the pleasant smile returned. Catherine, I'm so glad you came. I couldn't resist. The words felt thick in her mouth. You piqued my curiosity. He stepped aside, gestured for her to enter. The room was neat, organized. A single suitcase in the corner. Clothes hung precisely in a closet. Nothing out of place. Please sit. He indicated a chair by the desk. Can I get you something to drink? Water would be nice. He walked to the mini fridge. Catherine's eyes swept the room, looking for anything that might be evidence. Anything that might help. She noticed the closet door was slightly ajar. Behind it, she glimpsed something that made her blood run cold. Photographs. Dozens of them, pinned to the inside of the closet door. Women's faces. Surveillance-style shots taken from a distance. And in the center of the collage, a photograph of her. Michael turned back with the water. Caught her looking. His expression changed. That's unfortunate, he said softly. I was hoping we could take this slow. Catherine's hand went to her pocket. The panic button. She pressed it. The police are on their way, she said. They know everything. Do they? Michael set down the water. Walked toward her. What exactly do they know, Catherine? That a man named Michael Werner stays at this hotel? That name doesn't exist. That man doesn't exist. They know about the 5 women. They know you were there when they disappeared. Being somewhere isn't a crime, and there's no evidence I did anything to anyone. He was close now. Too close. Just like there won't be any evidence of what happens tonight. He lunged. Catherine threw herself sideways, crashing into the desk. Pain exploded through her shoulder. She grabbed the desk lamp, swung it at his head. He caught her wrist. Twisted. The lamp clattered to the floor. I've been doing this for a long time, he hissed. Do you really think you're the first one who thought she could stop me? The door burst open. Officers flooded the room. Holloway's voice. On the ground. Now. But Michael didn't go down easily. He fought like an animal. All that unremarkable politeness stripped away to reveal something feral and desperate underneath. It took 4 officers to subdue him, to get the handcuffs on, to drag him out of the room while he snarled and spat and promised that they couldn't prove anything. Catherine sat on the floor, breathing hard, her shoulder throbbing. Holloway crouched beside her. Are you okay? The closet, she said. Look in the closet. They looked. What they found would make national news. The photographs were just the beginning. Hidden in the lining of Michael Werner's suitcase were items that belonged to each of the 5 missing women. A watch, a necklace, a scarf, a keychain, a ring, trophies, kept for over a decade, carried with him everywhere he went. DNA analysis matched the items to the victims. Search warrants on properties linked to his shell companies uncovered more evidence. A storage unit in Georgia with journals documenting the disappearances in meticulous detail. His real name was Gerald Morse, 56 years old. No criminal record. A former insurance adjuster who had learned to move through the world like a ghost, targeting women who were traveling alone and far from home. He had been doing this for far longer than anyone realized. The 5 Charleston disappearances were just the ones they knew about. Federal investigators were already looking at unsolved cases in 6 other states. Patricia Reeves was located in Maine, where she'd fled after leaving Charleston. She cried when she heard the news. 11 years of wondering if she was crazy, of doubting what she'd seen, of trying to convince herself it was just paranoia. And finally, validation. The families of the 5 women were notified. The bodies were never found, but at least they had answers. At least they knew what had happened to their loved ones. At least they could begin to grieve. And Catherine Marsh went home. David was waiting for her at the airport. He held her for a long time without saying anything. She told him everything over the phone, the whole story, From the note in the hotel room to the final confrontation. He'd listened in silence, and when she was done, he'd said, "I'm proud of you." It was the first time in years she'd heard him say those words. On the drive home, she watched the familiar streets pass by and felt like a stranger in her own life. Everything looked the same. The apartment buildings, the coffee shops, the billboards advertising things she didn't need. But she was different. She had faced something dark and terrible, and she hadn't looked away. She hadn't played it safe. She hadn't made the sensible choice. And 5 families, who had spent 11 years wondering if they would ever know the truth, finally had their answers. That night, Catherine sat in her apartment and looked at the note one last time. She'd kept it, folded twice, just like when she'd found it. 8 words in blue ink on hotel stationery. "Don't trust the man in 412. He knows." Patricia Reeves had left that note without knowing if anyone would find it, without knowing if it would matter. She had done what she could and hoped that somehow, and possibly, it would be enough. And it was. Sometimes the universe really does put people in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Sometimes a canceled flight and a delayed connection and a random room assignment can change everything. Sometimes 8 words can save lives. Catherine folded the note carefully and put it away. Then she picked up her phone and called Patricia Reeves. They talked for hours. 2 strangers who had been brought together by chance and circumstance, connected now by something neither of them fully understood. When the call ended, Catherine walked to her window and looked out at the city lights. She thought about the 5 women, about their families, about the long road ahead as the legal system ground through its processes. She thought about her marriage and whether it was worth saving. She thought about her job and whether it was what she really wanted. She thought about playing it safe, about making the sensible choice, about all the years she'd spent being careful. And she decided that she was done with careful. The world was full of darkness, full of people like Gerald Morse, hiding behind pleasant smiles and ordinary faces, full of victims who never got justice and families who never got answers. But it was also full of people like Patricia Reeves, who left notes for strangers and hoped they would make a difference, and people like Catherine, who found those notes and refused to look away. That was worth something. That was everything. She stood at the window until the sun came up, watching the darkness give way to light. And then she started planning what came next.